This video is about an easy mistake you can make with if statements that has quite serious potential consequences. Now I've gone back to my original basic if program, but I've taken out the curly brackets. If you remember, the first one had a curly bracket there and there, and this version I've taken them out. Just take them back out again. Now if we save this and compile it and run it, you can see that it works. Okay, it prints out x is 0, which is what we want to do. X is equal to 0, so we've assigned it 0 there. So this seems to be perfectly fine. Okay, you don't need the curly brackets, and that's true if you only put one thing after the if statement. Okay, the way an if statement really works is it says, if this condition is true, do the one thing that comes after it. Now if that one thing is grouped together in curly brackets, it treats them as one thing, and it does them all. A code that's grouped together in curly brackets is called a compound statement, okay, and it forms one unit. If you only want to do one thing, one line, you don't have to put the curly brackets in, but you absolutely should. It's a very bad style practice not to do this, and the reason is because you can end up with a situation like this. If I just put another line in here, that's good. Okay, now we've indented this second line, so it's tempting to think that if it does the first one and does the second one, it's doing the second one because the condition is true, i.e. if x is equal to 0, it does these two lines, okay, because we've indented it. But remember what we said about indenting, it doesn't actually mean anything to Java, it's just for human readability. So if I save this and I run it, it seems to work. X is 0, that's good. But if I go back to my program and I change the x to be 1 and save it again and do it again, now the logic we want is it shouldn't print anything, but actually it still prints that good. That's good. And the reason is because the way this works is it says if x is equal to 0, do the one thing after that, which is that thing there. If you want to group the things properly together, you need to put the brackets in. And now if I save this and compile it, and oops, that's me typing the wrong thing. Then you can see it prints nothing, which is correct. If we change it back to 0, it should print both the things again now, which it does. Okay. Now you may think, well, what's the problem? I've only got one thing. I only want to do that one thing. I haven't got two things. And the problem is that very often you'll find that you go back to your code later on and change it. And you might have said, well, okay, I'm only going to do one thing here. I won't put the brackets in. Later on you go back and you edit your code. You put something else in. You forget to put the brackets in, and now your code is wrong. So it's good practice to always put the curly brackets in, even if you're only doing one thing. And some newer programming languages, which not really in widespread use yet, but nonetheless are newer, require you to do that. You don't have a choice. It gets even worse if you have an else down here. So I'm going to get rid of this line here, and I'm going to get rid of the brackets again. Say it's worse, but in some ways it's better. Else, I'm going to put the drat. Put this in here. Now we've put the brackets in for one but not the other. Now this is perfectly fine as it is here. We can save this and I can compile it. I'm not going to run it again, I'm just going to take your word for it that it's going to be work. Now if I put in here, back in here, system.out print line, and then we'll see what happens now. Compile it, we find that we need to save it first before we compile it. Now it doesn't work, there's an error, it does not compile, it says else without if. The reason for that is, as far as Java is concerned, this if statement starts there and it includes that statement there. This statement is going to be executed regardless of whether the if is true, and then suddenly it's come across an else in the middle of nowhere, okay, which basically means I don't know what that belongs to. Now it might seem obvious to us reading it, but remember this is the compiler, it's not a human, so you must put in the brackets, and that's the correct way to do this, to write it like that.